to be not based on sets of scientific principles, but political manipulation of science. What you see when you go to the website Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, which is ae911truth.org, is a set of evidence for the controlled demolition of Buildings 7 and Buildings 1 and 2.
Really, one of the biggest pieces of proof that it's an inside job isn't just all the physical evidence, it's then how the government and the media try to cover up that evidence. That's the guilt, because it's literally acting very suspicious.
Well, for instance, John Gross denying that there's molten metal. I mean, I can go through all of that. There are numerous witnesses. We show two on the website. On the upper right-hand corner, you can see this list of evidence for controlled demolition at the World Trade Center 7 and 1 and 2. At Building 7, a 47-story skyscraper, not hit by an airplane on 9/11. It fell symmetrically, smoothly, at a virtually free-fall speed into its own footprint. A perfect controlled demolition, just like all of the controlled demolitions that we've seen numerous times on TV. What are the features of a controlled demolition? One at a time, we have a rapid onset of destruction at the base of the building. We have two witnesses who talk about explosions, huge, bursting the windows out, and then the building comes down. That's in direct violation of the official story, which talks about fires softening the steel and then bringing the building down. Well, there's only graphic evidence for 2 or 3 fires in that building, 5th and 12th and maybe 13th floor. The Securities and Exchange Commission was on the 12th and 13th floor. These are on the north side of the building, on the far side, away from the World Trade Center tower. There was some smoke. There's evidence of lots of smoke on the south side facing the tower. The official story tells us that the steel was softened, but if that was the case and this building fell due to fires by their nature creep from place to place, leaving one area cool and burning another area, that would force an asymmetrical collapse. The building would tip over. Only a handful of companies in the United States are qualified to and skilled enough to bring a building down symmetrically into its own footprint. So for the first time in history, fires have done what only a handful of demolition companies are capable of doing, and they don't always do it perfect. There are a number of rather hilarious examples of controlled demolitions gone wrong. But this one was beautiful at the World Trade Center 7, if it weren't otherwise so tragic. So we have a rapid onset of destruction at the base with these explosions. Then we have the sounds of explosions heard by the witnesses, Craig Bartner of the New York Police Department and another emergency responder. We have this symmetrical collapse. It doesn't tip over at all. It goes straight down into its own footprint. We have evidence of squibs in World Trade Center 7. These are mistimed explosions. They go off at the wrong time. Look on the website at the upper 7 stories on the right side of the building in the flash video. You'll see poof, 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 synchronistically timed, floor by floor, puffs of dark smoke, which is also direct evidence of controlled demolition. We have the building falling into its own footprint, and as it does, there is a tremendous surge of pyroclastic dust flow, like cauliflower enfolding itself, shaped like a cauliflower. The fire is enfolding itself due to the tremendous heat. Where did that heat come from? Most controlled demolitions are produced with C4 or RDX explosives. If you want to blame a building collapse on a fire, what you'd use is something more silent, such as thermite. Thermite's byproduct is molten iron. A molten iron is 4,000 to 5,000 degrees in heat, and this produces this tremendous pyroclastic dust cloud as well. The New York Fire Department found tons of this molten iron underneath not only Building 7, but underneath Building 1 and 2 as well, flowing like lava, they say. There's numerous witnesses, including the World Trade Center structural engineer, Leslie Robertson, who was quoted as saying, 21 days after the event of 9/11, the molten metal was still running. So where does that come from? As I mentioned, the byproduct of thermite is molten metal. Thousands of cutter charges placed throughout the building would produce tons of molten metal. Now, John Gross of the NIST denies that there's any molten metal, and this is a flat lie. And as a result, the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, as well as Stephen Jones and Kevin Ryan and other family members of those who lost their lives at 9/11, are demanding a request for correction of NIST for this point and many other points that are flawed. Why?
That's a big deal, and I'm about to say why.
Yeah.
He came to UT, he said there is no molten metal, he laughed, the people laughed, but then we have all the aerial photographs, we have the federal government releasing them, saying weeks and weeks later, over a month later, there's these molten pools. It's been a big public controversy, and they just say, hey, it doesn't exist. Can humans speak? That's a big deal. And that's only, as you said, one of dozens of things where they just deny things that are publicly already admitted. I mean, they're the conspiracy theorists. Everybody knows it was molten metal. The government admitted it, took the photos, the thermal photos. What, 3 different agencies got them? I mean, talk about that specifically.
Yeah. So John Gross is denying that there's molten metal. He says there's no evidence of it. Nobody's produced it. It's a direct, bald-faced lie. And that's why we've demanded a new investigation. That's why we've also called for a request for correction of NIST. There's plenty of eyewitness reports of this molten metal. Sarah Atlas citing that there's molten metal flowing beneath my feet. We have 3 firemen on video talking about molten metal flowing like lava, and John Gross is denying that there's any evidence. We have tons of previously molten metal pulled out of the ground, sitting in aircraft hangars. They call them meteorites. There's plenty of evidence of previously molten metal, tons of it. NASA has created photos of the World Trade Center site showing areas of temperature range up to 1,400 degrees on the surface, indicating far greater temperatures below the surface. On our site, in fact, we have a photograph of the backhoe picking up a chunk of metal which is dripping with molten metal. Some of this previously molten metal was sent to Dr. Stephen Jones of Brigham Young University, formerly of Brigham Young University. He's a physicist, PhD, who analyzed the slag and the steel samples and the dust. What did he find in it? The chemical trace signature of thermite. In fact, thermate, a high-tech form of thermite with sulfur added, which lowers the melting temperature of steel. Thermite is an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. What he found was manganese, fluorine, potassium, and other chemicals in the correct proportion that strongly suggest thermite was used. Even FEMA found rapid oxidation, sulfidation, and intergranular melting in the ends of these beams and columns. Why is that so important? Because it's direct evidence of the use of thermate, sulfur, sulfidation. What did NIST do with this information? Nothing. They dropped it out of the whole picture in an effort to hide all of the evidence for controlled demolition. This is a crime. We have expert corroboration for controlled demolition. Danny Jawenko, a top European controlled demolition expert, cited this is a controlled demolition. A team of experts